morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today we're going to take a look at Hollywood strategy via 3 case studies, aka news stories. But before we do that, you might want to consider your own strategy for winning one of the 3 Blu-ray copies of Terminator Genisys that Dolby Atmos has given me to give away to you. So I announced this giveaway yesterday, but I just want to remind you because you have until the end of the day tomorrow to get your tweets in. So the rules, once again, are you have to tweet me at Grace Randolph, and then you have to include the hashtags Dolby Atmos and Terminator Genisys or Terminator 5 if you want to get as many characters for your entry as you can. But it must include those hashtags to be a valid entry. And then with the remaining characters available to you, you have to tell me why the Terminator franchise just won't die, even though some of the movies seem like they would kill it. But anyway, I'm again so pleased that Dolby Atmos has thought of us, and I have again 3 copies to give away to you, and I'll be selecting the 3 best entries over the weekend, and I will announce them on Monday. But you have until the end of the day tomorrow to get yours in. So good luck, and again, consider your strategy. Now, as I said, we're going to talk about Hollywood strategy today, so that's the lens at which we're going to look at each of these news stories. And the first one is actually something that a number of you wrote to me about, and that's that Deadpool will be portrayed as pansexual, as he has apparently been portrayed in some of the Deadpool comics. Pansexual basically means, no definitive sexual orientation. But I have to say, I've read a decent number of Deadpool comics, and I've never seen that side of the character. So it's clearly something that some writers, want to put in there and some don't. But anyway, the reason we're finally discussing it is that it's no longer a rumor. It's been confirmed by Simon Kinberg, not only the big Fox Marvel guy, but also he's working on Star Wars. So Simon Kinberg's star is rising, and he also does a lot of publicity as a result. And he's really great at doing publicity. He's a fantastic interview. I've spoken to him a few times, so it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. And I think he's a really good writer to go out and writer producer to take a step forward into the spotlight. You often don't see that, which I think is a shame, and I think Simon Kinberg is great because he's going to make it so that more writers can do that because he sets such a good tone. But anyway, Simon, and it's interesting because he hasn't really become a director. Usually that's the end game of most writers. So to see someone emerge as a writer-producer and to see their career still be able to move forward without taking on the director's role is, I think, very encouraging. But anyway, what did he say? So he was talking about Deadpool, and he said, "Well, I think your audience has seen from the materials so far," and he's talking about the movie, "that the goal is to be as true as possible to the essence of the Deadpool canon. The character, as you know, identifies as pansexual in the comics." And again, I didn't know that. And while we don't explore it in depth in this film, it's definitely alluded to. Mainly in this movie, we cover his love story with Vanessa from the comics, but it's certainly something that we could go deeper into in future movies and has a presence in this one. Now, when people wrote to me about this, it was in a very positive context, saying, "Oh, I'm so happy. It'll be wonderful to have a main superhero, like the lead of his movie being not heterosexual." So I feel a little bit bad because I do not think that this is going in the altruistic direction that those of you who wrote to me are hoping that it is. So what are my concerns? Well, first off, I think that, Deadpool is a very humorous character, and anything is fair game. He's a little bit like Seth MacFarlane that way, who makes no shortage of his own gay jokes. So my concern is that his pansexuality might end up being used as a joke, right, to elicit laughs from the audience. Because we've certainly seen that with comedy before, and I think that that's not what those of you who want to see a non-heterosexual superhero are looking for. And also, full disclosure, I've written, 2 gay superheroes in my comic book Superbia, a Night Fox and Agent Twilight, and I worked very hard not only to be respectful to the LGBT community, but also to the superhero community to reconcile those two. Although a number of comic book fans, there's a huge crossover basically between the comic book community and the LGBT community. So Hollywood should tread lightly. But also, I wanted it to be very realistic. I wanted to, on a side note, I get upset when they're, and actually the writer of Freeheld actually recently talked about this, that often when, gay or, LGBT characters are portrayed in entertainment, they're always like halos over their head. They're perfect, flawless individuals. And we all know that those aren't particularly interesting. Everybody likes flawed, damaged people, like, because that's what everybody is. Everybody has problems. So I think that's if LGBT characters are going to become more and more of actual characters and not tokens, they need to have they need to be full bodied. They need to be very dynamic. They need to be very real. And I think that Deadpool is not going to be that character. I think that Deadpool is going to make LGBT jokes. He's going to make other characters squirm or be uncomfortable. And you don't want to, I think he's going to use flirtation as a weapon, right? Either to throw people off their guard because they're attracted to him, or to throw them off their guard because they don't want to go there. And I think that's not the way I think anybody wants to see, non-heterosexuality introduced into the superhero genre. So I think it's going to end up being a joke, and that could potentially backfire, by the way, on the Deadpool movie. Then the other thing is that while I respect the fact that the movie is trying to be so respectful of the source material, I think they might be missing the forest for the trees, and the trees, of course, being all the little details. But here's the thing. While Deadpool does have a lot of fans, they aren't anywhere near at the level of the number of people that need to buy a movie ticket for this movie to be considered a success, especially when it's going up against Zoolander 2, which is going to be rated PG-13 and has one of the best ad campaigns I've ever seen. They just recently released that poster of, Derek Zoolander and, Owen Wilson's Hansel taking selfies of themselves, and more interested in that than the poster. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's really, really clever. They're really pushing the edge of the envelope there with that ad campaign, and it's going to be a very strong competitor. So Deadpool, in contrast, I see them just whittling away their audience, right? Like less and less people, being able to go to the movie, right? I mean, I think that, and also it's a really tricky situation, but you have the violence problem, right? You have the R rating, right? And then now you're adding pansexuality to the mix. I don't know how much it's actually in the film, but they're talking it up like it's a big part of the film, and that could raise, some apprehension when it comes to parents, for instance. Like people have said, oh, parents will take their kids to see Deadpool, so what if it's a little violent? Well, what if it starts having like some really in-depth discussions about sexuality? I mean, there's different levels that parents are willing to be okay with of introducing to their kids. There are Deadpool fans for sure, but I don't think they probably wonder what Deadpool sexuality is. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on the kid and their level of maturity. But when they're talking about Vanessa here, and also I think from what I know of the character, Deadpool's most famous love affair is another heterosexual one with Siren, from the X-Men, Banshee's daughter. That's his dream girl. I don't think he's ever actually been in a legitimate pansexual relationship. So I think it's going to be used as a joke, and I think it's just limiting the audience even more. And I think at the bottom line, at the end of the day, I almost combined those two. The bottom of the day, you want to have a movie that's successful. And so I think that Deadpool should be working very hard to balance appealing to the hardcore fans and winning over new fans. And I think right now I see another Kick-Ass. I see another Scott Pilgrim versus the world. And that is not what Deadpool needs to be. So we'll see. I'm nervous about it. I think we'll see how the film actually ends up turning out in terms of box office revenue. But again, there was a lot of interest in Kick-Ass. There's a lot of interest in Scott Pilgrim. But the box office dollars never materialized. So I'm curious, what do you think of how Deadpool, do you think that the pansexuality will be something that's commendable, or do you think it'll just be a joke? How would you feel about that? And also, what do you think of Deadpool's do you agree with me that Deadpool is continuously limiting its widespread appeal? And do you think that's a problem, or you just want your legitimate hardcore Deadpool movie and you don't care if it doesn't make a lot of money? Which would be a mistake, by the way, if you ever want to see Deadpool 2. All right, so that's the first story of the day, and obviously we're talking about some Hollywood strategy there. Now we're going to move over to Seth Rogen, who I think I have great respect for as a businessman. The interview didn't work out so well, but I guess in hindsight you can see why maybe he took a little bit too big of a risk there. Although when you think of how Team America did, he probably felt this would be his Team America. But Seth Rogen, I think, you can really see when you step back overall and you look at his career is that he's really a fan of film. He's a cinephile. He knows what does well, and I think it's very clever of him to keep his brand of humor the same, but to hit different genres. He, of course, with End of the World, This Is the End, that was really an apocalyptic movie, a really hardcore apocalyptic movie. I really appreciated how it hit all the tropes and spent the money it needed on some pretty cool visual effects for that. He had now he has his holiday movie coming out next week, the night before. Everybody wants to have a Christmas movie, right? You want to be part of people's Christmas collections, holiday movie collections. And now he's doing an animated musical. And it seems that he's working very hard to also be true to that genre. So, not only does he make an authentic one, but I think that's very clever to, rope people in on the nostalgia train, right? Or just like the credibility train. Like, oh, wow, I love that kind of movie. Even though Sausage Party seems perhaps a little bit, R-rated in the humor, or I think Seth Rogen sometimes should have his own rating. But I'm going to go see it because I love animated musicals. So what has he done? He's hired Alan Menken and Glenn Slater to do the music for it. Alan Menken, of course, being of Disney fame. And Glenn Slater actually having worked with Alan Menken before on a Disney show on ABC, Gallivant. And I don't know if anyone saw Gallivant. It takes about 1 or 2 episodes to get into it, but once you're into it, it's actually a really good show. It's funny, the music is good, I had a good time watching it, and I was sad to see it go. It might come back, and if it did come back, I would watch it. So if you're looking for something to watch, it was only like 8 episodes, so it's not a huge commitment. I would check it out. And again, though, you have to be prepared to give it 2 or 3 episodes before you either decide you love it or you walk away. But anyway, that shows that Alan Menken and Glenn Slater are very good at doing comedic musicals, and I think that's very important for Sausage Party. So I think that's fantastic. I think it sounds very good, and it's very clever on the part of Seth Rogen. We all start getting a little bit of story details, and basically all the food in the supermarket, and Seth Rogen is voicing a sausage, Frank, they think that the humans are gods, and when they take food, they take it to the great beyond, not to their kitchen to cook it and eat it, because nobody comes back, obviously. And that reminded me actually a little bit of Mad Max Fury Road with what Immortan Joe promised his soldiers about Valhalla. So I think that's actually pretty interesting as well. Also very adult. I like that he's going to take something that's generally geared toward an all ages audience, but do it for like an adult audience. And that's kind of what he's doing with a Christmas movie too, or a holiday movie. So I think that's awesome. And I think that I think Seth Rogen, sometimes he goes too far, but I think when he does hit a bullseye, he hits it strong. So this could potentially be a bullseye for him, and I think it's a very good strategy. So I'm curious, what do you think? Are you any more interested in Sausage Party? Has he already won you over? Did he have you at Sausage Party? And also, what do you think of Alan Menken making a movie like this? Do you think that that's really great of him to expand his brand and to think, to go outside the box a little bit? Or do you think he's betraying the animated classics that he's done music for in the past with such raunchy material? All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day is about a strategy when it comes to breaking into Hollywood, because you probably saw this story. But Eric D. Wilkinson, who is an independent producer of like really indie, like cheesy films, although Troma Films and the like has produced the likes of James Gunn, who not only went on to get Guardians of the Galaxy, but hit a home run with Guardians of the Galaxy. So don't ever count anybody out. They can always pleasantly surprise you. But James Gunn seems to be a better businessman, or at least he did it the old Hollywood way of, who do you know? And he knew Joss Whedon, and Joss Whedon recommended him, and he got the gig because he was cheap, and then he delivered in spades, and now he's like one of Marvel's favorite sons. So anyway, Eric D. Wilkinson, though, apparently doesn't know Joss Whedon or anybody in Hollywood. So he decided instead to take out a full-page ad in the Hollywood Reporter. Now, to give you some context, back in the day, when people actually got the print version of the Hollywood Reporter, and I guess a couple of people still do, that full-page ad, or any ad, was kind of like a Hollywood thing, right? Like people took it out to celebrate people, to make fun of people. It was kind of like almost ads in the yearbook and stuff like that, right? Or in the school newspaper, or hanging up on people's lockers, right? It had that kind of feel to it. And for instance, most recently, one of the most infamous Hollywood trade ads, and this isn't just a Hollywood Reporter, it's Variety as well, was Melissa Leo, who would buy ads for herself to promote her Oscar campaign for The Fighter. And she ended up winning, so it worked. But everybody was laughing at her when she did it because they were these really cheesy, horrible photos, and she put them in all the trades, and everyone saw them because people to some degree were still getting the print version. But I think now everybody is pretty much digital. But here's an important distinction. Everybody is digital who is a fan, and that's really who you need these days to get Hollywood's attention. So Eric D. Wilkinson didn't do that, though. He went straight to the industry, and I want to explain to you why that is a mistake, and I want to give you some examples of people who did get Hollywood's attention. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't, but they did it in a more legitimate way, so that you can see that the door is not totally closed, but you have to be smarter in the way you do it. So here's the problem with Eric D. Wilkinson's full-page ad in the Hollywood Reporter with his pitch for a new Die Hard movie. First of all, he kind of like invaded Hollywood space, right? He didn't ease his way in there. He didn't let Hollywood discover him. He kind of like broke into their home and sat in their living room and was like, "Don't you love hanging out with me?" And they were like, "What the hell are you doing in my house?" So I think it was also his credits. Hollywood is really, who do you know, what have you done? And you have to have one or the other, or preferably both. Eric D. Wilkinson doesn't have either. So that puts him in a really bad negotiating spot. And he decided to just try, he didn't want to do the work basically to build up his argument for his idea. He apparently feels his idea is so strong that he can just pitch it directly. And and I think, again, this was a mistake, not to do the work to pitch it properly. So he just because he just paid the money for an ad and wrote out his idea, and he actually, it was very poorly written out. It didn't look good. It was just like a fax or an email from a crazy person almost. And put it in the trades. And he's getting some attention for it, but he will not, I don't think it's going to work out because, again, he invaded Hollywood space, and he kind of almost, it seemed like he was trying to tell Hollywood how to do their job. And Hollywood hates that. They hate it. Look how they're really straining against the fandom and just in general of having, look at how it happened at Comic-Con, where they're like, "How dare you videotape our trailers and play them to the public? How dare you be excited to see our trailers?" And all the fans are like, "What are you complaining about? I'm excited about your movie." But anyways, you can see Hollywood's tricky. It's like a little forest animal which you have to coax out of its little dwelling. And Eric D. Wilkinson scared it back deep into its cave. Also, if they do look at the Die Hard pitch that he did, you can bet it will be just to make sure they don't copy it. Because here's the thing, Hollywood is deathly afraid of being sued. And rightfully so, because there's so much money at stake. So, they don't want Eric D. Wilkinson to accuse them of stealing anything from his pitch. So they're probably going to run in the opposite direction of his pitch, even if there was some overlap before. And that's why Hollywood likes you to have representation when they talk to you, because it gives them some blanket of security. Because your agent and manager will tell you, don't sue Hollywood or else you'll never work again, right? They don't want to deal with loose cannons. So let's talk about some good examples of getting into Hollywood so this doesn't seem too bleak and depressing. So Joseph Kahn. Great recent example with his Power Rangers fan film. It got a lot of attention. People liked it. It had a lot of views. People were like, "This is a Power Rangers movie I would like to see," so that helped him. And also, he's a successful music video director, working with Taylor Swift, for heaven's sakes, winning awards for the music videos that they're making. So that put him in a pretty good bargaining position. Now, of course, it didn't work out, but he was able to sit down with the Power Rangers people, have a discussion, and it didn't blow up in his face. And I think that Joseph Kahn, I wouldn't totally count him out. Also, you're going to see a pattern here of proof of concept, and that's something Eric D. Wilkinson doesn't have. He could have done an animated pitch, an animated movie. He could have done concept art, but he doesn't have any visuals. Hollywood and movies are a visual medium. You need to have a visual. You have to have proof of concept. And so Joseph Kahn did. Also, for instance, that animated Whaling in Space movie animation that was put out recently and got Simon Kinberg to make a movie deal with those people. Proof of concept. Also, everybody on the internet for like 2 days was like, "I love this. I would love to see a movie of this." So Hollywood, they love proven interest from audiences. It's why they're so in love with comic books, why they're so in love with books, why they're so in love with news articles, TV shows, remaking movies. There's a proven audience. So if you can take your proof of concept and say, "Look how many people watch this," they go, "Okay, there's an audience there." They feel a little better about investing in it. Then also Kung Fury, another great example. That guy's story still being written, but still he was he legitimately got attention. That was a very good way to try and break into the industry. So that's another good example. And you can see a pattern. Proof of concept, views. And he didn't know anybody. He knows apparently some people, obviously, and knows some people because he got some name talent to be in a short, which also helps, by the way. So again, that's another good example. At least he was respectful, right? You're like, okay, you got these cool, fringe actors to be in your live action, somewhat animated short. We can think of you someone as a respectable business person. Whereas Eric D. Wilkinson does not seem like someone you can realistically talk business with. Also, I think the most famous and most high-profile example recently is Neil Blomkamp, who, of course, used his Chappie press time because he knew that was a dead horse, which it's a great movie, but it died horrible death. Poor Chappie. But anyway, Neil Blomkamp was like, "I better secure my next movie," and he just pitched his Alien movie, Hardcore, which he also, by the way, as you might recall, had concept art for. So everyone went, "I would love to see a Neil Blomkamp Alien movie." So he got a deal with Fox. Now, unfortunately, as we all know now, that got put on an indefinite hold because they want to make, Ridley Scott took that brand back, that franchise back for Prometheus 2, which is now Alien Paradise Lost. And also Ridley Scott's talking about doubling down hard on the Alien franchise, so I don't see any room for Neil Blomkamp in the near future. But still, he got himself a deal, and that was a good way to do it as well. So basically, just to break it down for you, if you want to try and get Hollywood's attention, don't run into their house and tell them what to do and be super aggressive, right? Do your homework. Have your presentation truly prepared. Don't just be like, never feel your idea is so good that it will just stand on its own. No idea is that good. Hollywood is not a land of ideas, as you obviously can tell from the kind of movies that they produce, right? And how little respect they have often for writers. So Hollywood, again, who you know, what have you done? And also, I guess you can say, let's add a third thing to that, especially in the digital age when you can get a lot of views, how many people have seen your work? All right, so there's three things. Don't forget that. Who do you know? What have you done? How many views do you have? Or how much press do you have? Because also if you get a lot of publicity, that also works even if you don't have a lot of views. So that's very important to remember. And also don't get too discouraged because people like Ava DuVernay went through publicity to get into Hollywood. So you can start out in a different part of the industry and then maybe make a switch. It's hard, so make sure you pick a part of the industry you'd be okay staying in for your entire career, but that's another way you can do it as well because they build relationships in that publicity role and then they can turn those into directing, producing relationships. So just keep that in mind. Who do you know? What have you done? And how much publicity and views do you have? All right, so let's go on to the viewer question. This is from Wise Owl Reads. And Wise Owl Reads needs help with her college paper. And so she's asked for my help and any of you to also chime in because she wants to approach this question in her paper. So she wrote a wonderful intro, very kind of her. And then the question, though, is the Hollywood trend right now is not letting the classics die, such as Star Wars, Jurassic World, and Terminator, Genesis, so on and so forth. Basically, Hollywood is franchise happy. But again, that's what we were just talking about with Hollywood not, being risk averse. So they're like, okay, these are proven established brands. They have fan bases. I think they might have killed the Terminator one, but tweet me how they haven't if you want one of those Blu-rays. So anyway, Wise Al Reads continues saying, do you think that maybe in the future that Hollywood or Marvel can revisit the possibility of a Black Widow movie? If so, from a business standpoint, what would they have to do to make it happen? Thank you for taking the time to read this, and I hope you answer it. By the way, love the show. Keep it up. Lots of emojis. All right, so great question. I'm going to basically give you an outline for how I think you should approach this for your paper. First off, I don't think the Black Widow movie is out of the question even now. I think that after Lucy, and also I think Ghost in the Shell is going to be crucial to the future of a Black Widow movie. It's still very much in play over at Marvel. Also, I want to point out something that someone recently tweeted me, and that's an article talking about the salaries of people for Avengers Age of Ultron. Robert Downey Jr. highest paid at $40 million. Scarlett Johansson second highest paid at $20 million. So Marvel realizes, or at least has been forced to realize, her importance to the brand, to the franchise, both her character and her as an actress. So that's very encouraging. That kind of payday not only is encouraging for women making money in Hollywood, but it's encouraging to Black Widow fans because it shows that Marvel feels that there is indeed value there. So Scarlett Johansson right now is very busy. She's doing, of course, Winter Soldier. You can see that they put her in almost any movie that they can at this point. I mean, not Winter Soldier, Civil War. She was very heavily in Winter Soldier. But you can see that she's pretty much, the Captain America movies are almost hers as well. But they're working very hard with that character. And I think, though, she's booked up. Scarlett Johansson, everybody wants to work with her, partially because of Marvel, so Marvel should capitalize on that, I think, but she's really doing well. I mean, she not only has Ghost in the Shell, she not only had over $400 million gross with Lucy, but of course she's in the new Coen Brothers Hail Caesar movie. She was the voice in Her. She's doing a voice in the new movie Sing from Illumination Entertainment. Scarlett Johansson is in demand. So I think if Ghost in the Shell does well, she'll be 2 for 2 when it comes to action movies, recent action movies. And I think that will be the proof that Marvel needs that this isn't, neither one of them was a fluke, that people are willing to pay to see Scarlett Johansson in a lead role in an action movie. Then you might get your Black Widow movie, I think. I think she'd still be willing to do it. They'll probably have to pay her a significant amount of money. And also, you'll have a better idea of where the MCU is at that point. They'll be done with their Thor and Captain America movies. They might have room for a Black Widow movie at that point. Or she'll just team up and pour Carol Danvers movie. But also, so that's the first part. Then you have the situation where the female comic book movie is starting to really pick up steam. You have The Wasp. You have Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road. You have Wonder Woman coming. You have Captain Marvel. So these movies are coming. Also, they have to do well in addition. Although I think that if Ghost in the Shell does well, I think Scarlett Johansson will be free and clear because of Furiosa, if it didn't have such an insane budget, Mad Max Fury Road also would be considered a success. So I think that, Scarlett Johansson doesn't have to worry too much about that, but you should talk about the blossoming of female-centric superhero movies. Then I think the third thing that you need to talk about is older women in Hollywood, older actresses still getting work, right? Amy Adams, Jessica Chastain, Charlize Theron, Meryl Streep even, right? Cate Blanchett getting a considerable amount of work. And Scarlett Johansson is about a couple of years behind those actresses. So there is a very long, wide window where she could make this movie. The Black Widow movie could star Scarlett Johansson for quite some time and be a big box office revenue earner. So there's a lot of things in flux right now in Hollywood. Women in action movies, women in comic book movies. What women are being paid. They're important. Women going to the movies, making purchase price choices, and not just seeing chick flicks anymore. And then also, the situation with age. So I think that's all very important. So I think a Black Widow movie, I don't think you have to wait. I don't think it's going to be a Star Wars or a Jurassic World or a Terminator, maybe Terminator, but you're not going to have the same time between Star Wars and Jurassic World as you are going to have between now and a Black Widow movie. I think you'll probably see one, I guess, maybe in the next 5 or 10 years. And with the way Marvel plans in advance, that's not too far. So I hope that's helpful to your paper, Wise Al Reads. I hope that at least sparks some thoughts for how you want to approach it. And I'm curious to see what everybody else has to say down below. So that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please let me know what you think of today's top 3 stories on their own and through the lens of Hollywood strategy. Also, what you can please give Wise Al Reads your own advice on her paper, and then be sure to let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.